Hi, my name is Katya Wolf, and I was born in Ukraine, in the little city of Berdyansk, which is about 90 kilometers away from the city of Mariupol, which has been in the news so much recently. And I was raised between Ukraine and Belarus before arriving here in London about 24 years ago. So I have a very vast experience of navigating differences between British and Eastern European culture, and today I have a privilege of talking to you about some of them. Not all, because there are so many, but some of them that I personally found difficult to navigate at times. And talking to other people from Eastern Europe, they would agree with me that those were the main ones. And I wish I had someone prepping me before I came here. So I'm hoping with this little video to not only help you to understand the people who are coming to stay with you a little bit better, but also to prepare you for some emotions or feelings that might rise up as you are navigating the cultural differences yourself. So first thing that I want to mention is the British culture is a culture where politeness, propriety has a massive value, and it manifests itself in day-to-day life, where we use a lot of words to convey a simple thing. You know, we would say something like, "Would you kindly pass me that item? Would you mind? It would be so kind if you." We make sure that everything we convey is clad in politeness and many words. That is not the case in Eastern European culture, and you might yourself experienced Eastern European culture as being direct, or sometimes people perceive it as rude, which is not really the case. It's just that cultural codes or cultural values are completely different. So in Eastern Europe, it's much more important to convey the information than to appear polite. It doesn't mean that the culture is not polite. It just means that it expresses politeness in a different way. So don't be thrown back when your guests answer no to the question, "Would you like a cup of tea?" It's perfectly normal in Eastern Europe to say no or yes. And frankly, it actually hurts me when I go back home. It hurts me to hear no or yes, and I always want to finish with thank you or please. Sometimes I do. If I'm with close family, I just say thank you, just to nudge them a little bit. So, but yes, for people who haven't experienced living in the West, particularly in British culture, they would not even think twice about saying no or yes, or just saying no in the situations where you would expect them to say yes. For example, phrasing a request with Eastern European guests should be as direct as possible. If you ask a person from Eastern Europe, "Do you want to pass me that item, or do you want to finish that report, or do you want to go somewhere," meaning that you want them to do that, please be prepared to hear no, because they will hear your question at face value. They will hear, "Do you want this?" and they will say no if they don't want to. So if you just try to phrase questions as direct as possible, and remember, it might hurt you to be that direct, but it will not hurt them, because it's much more direct culture than here. I hope it makes sense. Within that category of directness and straightforwardness, you will encounter people being very free to speak their minds and giving you unsolicited advice. In British culture, there is this invisible space between people that we're so accustomed to that we don't even know that is there, because it's all that we know, but it becomes very tangible when you have a culture that doesn't have that space, pushing your boundaries a little. So when people will start being very direct or speaking their mind, you will notice that, goodness, something is missing between us. Remember, it's not, people are not being rude, people are just being themselves and living the values that they are accustomed to. And behind that lies, behind their directness and straightforwardness lies the desire to bond with you, or to show you that you adhere to them, and you're a friend. So that's, and again, I just want to make a big disclaimer. Of course, it's not every person. Of course, people vary, and everyone's background is different. Everyone's upbringing is different. Ukraine is a big culture, so a big country with different subcultures. So it's just such a generalization that I'm telling you about here, but generally, people from Eastern Europe tend to be much more comfortable at speaking their mind and giving you the advice that you might not want, especially when you share living space with them. Eastern European culture generally is much more expressive emotionally than British culture. And I remember I was working with a very brilliant translator, Robert Chandler, on some Russian classics, and I remember it just discussing how in British culture, in British language, the language is so rich to express emotions with words, but not necessarily with feelings. While in Eastern European culture, you might not find as many words for the same emotion and the same feeling, but people will express it with their bodies, mouth, their speech, their emotions, feelings. They will really express it with their life rather than with their words. So it's not uncommon for people to cry before you, and people will cry before you. People will be coming from very traumatic circumstances, and they will probably, your home might be the first time that they've settled and kind of they're going to have space to process what had just happened to them, because majority of them probably are still going through that adrenaline driven fight, fright, freeze, all those reaction to trauma and fear. So your space, your home might be the first time that they found themselves in they found the ability to process what just happened to them. So they won't be afraid to cry, they won't be afraid to express what's going on with them. So don't be thrown back by that. And if you, what would really help them in that moment is for you to engage with them emotionally. You don't necessarily need to say something. I remember my first years of living here, and I had some very difficult circumstances back at home that I had to process, and I remember being so surprised that people were trying to find words to help me, but not engaging with me emotionally. Again, not right or wrong, it's just a different way of being human, right? Different culture has a different way of being human. So don't be afraid to be with people as they navigate difficult emotions and feelings. Even cry with them if you can, or laugh with them if you can. Within the same category comes tactility. Tactility? Being tactile? Tactility, is it a word? Maybe not. But people are not afraid to be tactile. People are not afraid to hug. People are not afraid to express affections through touch. Be prepared for that too. I know that many of my friends really struggled with me being tactile when I came to Britain, and because they were not prepared for that, and in turn it hurt me, of course, so it's okay to say to someone, you know, I'm not comfortable hugging you. But if you are comfortable with hugging people, if you are comfortable embracing them in that way, literally embracing them, especially if they're sharing some traumatic stories or feelings, or want to connect to you in very real way, it's totally appropriate to be tactile. Don't be afraid of that. Another thing that was completely new to me when I arrived to this country was this concept of socializing. Socializing is I think it's an extraordinary skill that British people have. Just this ability to talk to anyone and make small talk, or just hold a kind of conversation, even if it doesn't really happen naturally. The ability to ask questions. This is an amazing skill, and I'm so glad that I learned it, but it was not natural, and it pretty much doesn't exist in Eastern Europe. Eastern Europeans are not afraid to only talk to you if they want to. And if they don't want to, they are very happy to sit there silently and not engage. And that appears, of course, if you're coming from British culture, that appears rude. Again, because the values are different. But in Eastern Europe, just remember, if you experience that, please remember they're not being rude to you. They were never taught how to be sociable, or how to socialize, how to do small talk, how to hold a conversation. Because the values are to be truthful, to be sincere, and speak from the heart. So if I have something to tell you from my heart, I will tell you. If I don't have something to tell you, I'm not going to make that effort. Well, it's not actually even making an effort. I'm just not going to tell you because I have nothing to share with you from my heart. So another quite funny thing I thought I'd mention is cross breeze. And by cross breeze, I mean when you have the window open and the door open and the air just flows between those two. So Eastern Europeans, I don't know why, but we're just afraid of cross breeze. And we think that all evil comes from cross breeze. God forbid you find your child in cross breeze. My husband, who's American, who comes from California, which is the country of breezes and air just flowing through your home because it's so hot outside, found it hilarious how paranoid people were in Ukraine when we went to visit my family with cross breezes, and especially when it comes to children. You might find that your guest will just confidently get up and close the window in the room where you're just enjoying the flow of fresh air, because for them it's normal just to keep themselves warm and away from cross breeze. You might need to ask them, it's okay to ask them just to sit somewhere else if you really want that fresh air, but just don't be surprised if people just take authority over your doors and windows when they feel cold. In fact, because of the history of Soviet Union, where the heating was regulated by the state, and even after the Soviet Union, for a very long time, the heating, the gas and oil, all these things were quite cheap. People would just have the heating on all the time because it would not be regulated from your home. It would just switch on by the town authorities and will be on at very high temperature all winter, and then it will just be off when the authority decided it would be off. So you didn't have any power in your home, but it would get very hot in your home. People are just so used to being warm in winter and having the heating just being there, that they, I reckon, will find it difficult to have a very measured way we use the heating here. And I remember myself and many Eastern European friends who came to Britain were complaining how cold it is in this country, in the houses where they were staying. So don't be surprised if you will have your guests mentioning that they're cold, or if your guests are shy, it might be worth asking them whether they need extra layers, extra blankets, because it's very, very unusual to have a cold house in Eastern Europe, and especially here, where we've got really extreme temperatures in summer. You might need to wrap them up a little bit, because the experience of summers is completely different. Summers in Ukraine are very hot. Food has a huge significance in Eastern Europe, and I think anyone who is away from home would be craving the foods that they're accustomed to, especially people who have been through so much and who haven't been able to cook properly, because most of them probably are coming from hostels and camps. So if you create an environment where your guests can cook, if you point them to Eastern European shops near you, any shop will do, Polish, Lithuanian, Russian shop. I don't think we have specifically Ukrainian shops in London, but we definitely have a plethora of Russian, Polish, Lithuanian, etc. They will be super, super, super grateful. You will also bless them if you can help them find a supermarket or butcher that sells meat on bone. I know it sounds pretty funny to talk about that, but the culture of making borscht in Ukraine borscht is a national dish. Borscht is a cross between a stew and a soup, and it requires a very good piece of meat on the bone to make that perfect bone broth that is vital for borscht. In fact, the culture of eating borscht or soup is so prevalent in Eastern Europe that people believe if you don't eat that daily, your stomach will fail. And I am not joking. I know it sounds like I am, but it's not a joke, it's true. People believe that all kind of evil comes from not eating первое, which is first course at lunch. So be prepared for your guests wanting to cook a lot. And again, every culture, every family is different, but yes, people will want to cook, and if you can create an environment where they can, that will be really a blessing for them. There is so much more that I could talk about, but I believe I've covered the main points that myself and my friends from Russia, Ukraine, Belarus and other Eastern European cultures had to deal with, and I really hope that this little video will help you as you prepare to open your hearts and homes to those who found themselves in such tragic circumstances. And on behalf of all Ukrainian people, I just want to thank you so much for your hospitality, for being willing to inconvenience yourself so much as to let someone from a different culture in, knowing that they are going to be navigating and processing so much. So thank you so much for your kindness and your willingness to be inconvenienced. Thank you.